In London around 8 years ago was an enterprise, an operation triggered by the desire we had quite a lot of support from the academy, but also from the sound system scene itself. To start a new project, which is Sonic Street Technologies, which produced this movie that we have just screened. And the main difference, I mean, the basic approach is the same, but the main difference is that with Sonic Street Technologies, we want to open the table for not only to reggae sound systems, but also for all other kinds of like grassroots sound technologies that play recorded music around the world. So we're all familiar with reggae sound systems, but there's actually quite a few others very interesting, very rich sonic street cultures around the world. So I could mention the Pico in the north of Colombia, or the Radiolas in the north of Brazil, or the Sonideros in Mexico cities. So basically what we try to do as Sonic Street Technologies is just to track down this grassroots network of sound and technology, what we call a sonic diaspora, and the way it can illuminate different ways to use technology and to work with technology for the benefit of local communities.
Thank you. And I think I would add to that, maybe we can talk a little bit about the events that we put on under Sound System International, because the way I remember it, there was something of an evolution. They began maybe more rooted in academic presentations, and then there was a move to have more and more participation from actual practitioners, sound system owners, operators, people active in the sound system field. And then maybe there became something of an equilibrium, or what are your thoughts and memories of that, Brian?
Yeah, basically, Sound System International started as a one-off event. It was Leo who was doing a research period in London from Brazil. I was doing my PhD, and we linked up with Julian. And so the idea just came like naturally to host a conference about sound systems. But basically the response was so great that we hosted like one more, and then we had a small satellite event in Jamaica as part of the Global Reggae Conference, thanks to Sonjah. And then we had a couple more, but like always getting bigger. So with more practitioners, we brought an actual small sound to Goldsmiths University to play music. We brought a vinyl market, and we started to, basically what we found out is that was like an appetite for this kind of conversations As example, I can mention we had one of the, I guess, highlight panels. We had the Goldsmiths was with 7 sound women, black women in sound system from different generations playing sound since the 70s. And the room was packed by researchers, but also by a lot of people, because Goldsmiths University is located in South London, New Cross, which is an historical basically environment from sound system culture. So we had the room packed with a lot of like local people, reggae lovers, which like never entered the university before, but they came to hear their fellow sound women speaking about the history or history. So that was quite an highlight, I guess.
Indeed, yes, it was quite a moving session and a very illuminating one. Now, Dr. Niaah, you've been a guest on our panels before, but maybe you can introduce yourself and your work to the audience here, remind us of some of your achievements, your books, and other things that you're involved with, and tell us how this Sonic Street Technologies project fits in with your work more broadly.
Thank you, David. The mic doesn't want to move. So greetings, everyone. It's really my pleasure to be back here at Rototom Sunsplash. It's one of my favorite events in the world. I see some familiar faces, and I'm really happy to see everybody. The work I do, some of you know, my first book, Dance Hall From Slave Ship to Ghetto, is one that documented dance hall from the perspective of space. My first degree is in geography with a minor in geology. And I really do all of the work I'm presently doing about Jamaican popular music in the context of cultural studies, which is my PhD, with a foundation in geography. So I've been tracking, for example, International Reggae Festival, Geographies and Economies for some time. That book is still to come. I have another book, edited book, Dance Hall, which looks at dance hall insecurities, recently published by Routledge. But if you Google me, you're going to find some of that stuff. I don't need to kind of spend too much time talking about that, various journal articles and collaborations and so on. I think perhaps the most interesting part of my career has been the kind of international collaboration that I've managed to do in the context of a number of projects. So this Sonic Street Technologies project is one that I'm very excited about. Really happy to be leading the Jamaica team. And if I was able to work on projects like the Sonic Street Technologies project, you know, as exciting as that all the time, it would be fascinating. It would be really fabulous. There are other things I'm doing. So, for example, we got a European Union grant recently for the development of cultural and creative industries in the Caribbean, 3 million euros. I think that's really great. There are some people here, I think, that know about that project, and we've managed to get quite a number of proposals in. I'm also working on things that are important to me, like gender-based violence. We have a project with the University of Leicester where we are using the arts to educate Jamaican students, Trinidadian students, it's in both Jamaica and Trinidad, about gender-based violence. And of course, you know that where the Caribbean is concerned, there are some African countries like South Africa where gender-based violence is a problem as well, but in the Caribbean, certainly, Guyana, Trinidad, we have some challenges there. So, you know, as societies, with what I consider to be some of these social pathologies, we need to be able to speak honestly about them. And I think those projects help me to be not only socially conscious and socially responsible, but certainly activist in my scholarship on Jamaican popular culture. What else shall I say, David?
Actually, what I'd like to mention for each of you, or to ask, to put to you, to tell us a few words about, is just that my interpretation is that neither of you are distant academics. You're actually deeply involved in what you're writing about. So, Brian, maybe you can speak a little bit about your sound system and record label, and Sonjah, you can tell us about your experience of being a participant in dancehall sessions and which sounds you follow and so on.
Yeah, okay. I've been running a sound system based in Naples, Italy for more than 15 years, and a record label too, called Baba Boom Hi-Fi. By the way, it's funny because we were kind of invited to play this year, but the date didn't match because we were busy on another festival. Then this festival was cancelled, and I was invited to present my basically my university project. So that was that was fun. And basically, as I mentioned before, what sound system, international, and sonic street technologies are really about is to give value to the practitioner's culture and approach to sound and sound system. And having this double background as a practitioner and as a researcher, I got a PhD and I published a book last year. I mean, having this double background, I think I'm really able to see the value of this kind of operation also from a sound practitioner point of view. Because as an example, when we hosted a 3-day sound system international event in Naples, we had a lot of the younger local sound systems in attendance. And for them was sort of mesmerizing because we had like speakers and artists from all over the world actually sharing their knowledge. And basically a lot of them came to thank us as organizers, saying how much that has been like important and influential to them. And I thought that if I'd been exposed to this sort of events and knowledge before, my own sound system path would have probably been, I don't know, like stronger or different. So in a sense, we try to to benefit the culture, so to create opportunities, exposure, add value to what people are already doing. So it's absolutely a non-extractive research methodologies and approach that we try to pursue. And well, I think from a sound system point of view, I think that's very, very important and absolutely worthy.
Just remind us the title of your book, please. And yes.
My book is in Italian and it's called Black Noise, Tecnologie della Diaspora Sonora, which means technologies of the sonic diaspora.
Okay, and before we go any further, I just want to play a little bit of track 5 just to remind us of what Brian's been involved in producing.
I see the masses gather around when you're stringing up the sound. An international session. We play sound system full time. We play sound system worldwide. Cause every day we string it up and every night we jam it up. Come my selector, play us some tunes, you know how we love that. Loving at the dance, blessing for the people when the DJ starts to chat. Another night we string up the sound, and in the morning we pull it down. It's an ancient tradition, we keep the dance all going. So when some people are sleeping, that's when the dance all is one.
Yes. Okay, yes. And Sonjah, yes, tell us about your involvement with sound systems as a
Thank you, David.
experience.
So, you know, let me let you into a little secret. When I was 16 years old, my father had a 16th birthday party for me, staged it at our house. It was a traffic blocking sound system event. But even before that, I was one of those lucky enough to have gone to events like Reggae Sunsplash at age 13. And one of my most vivid memories was watching Rita Marley on stage singing One Draw. So I guess, you know, even before that, my mother used to come home from work and play music, and we used to dance around the house, jump up on the bed dancing. My sister, who is here in the audience, big up yourself, and my Jamaican posse over there. We grew up in a musical household, and even before that, my grandparents went to the UK and returned to Jamaica in the 1960s and bought a jukebox. So even when we went to my grandparents' house, there was that foundation of all the music that was being selected on the jukebox, and my uncles who traveled to Kingston to buy music would be the key persons in making sure that the current music was being played on this jukebox. And so the yard, my grandparents' yard, actually gained a name, Shanty Town, because of the way in which this music was being played. I don't even know if my sister knows all of that. So, having asked all of these questions over the years, I made the links to how much music was so much a part of my upbringing, and Jamaican music being one of the most infectious. You know, one of the things I'll tell you is the sound system is really our national instrument. Most people don't know that, but you've probably heard me say this a number of times now. Just like, you know, Trinidad steel pan, Jamaica's musical instrument is the sound system. And when you think of the innovations from the 1940s, late 1940s with Headley Jones coming up, it's no mistake. It's no, you know, it's not a coincidence that Jamaican sound system music is so much a foundation of who I am. And the other little secret I'll let you into is that most people think my favorite genre of music out of Jamaica is reggae. It's actually not. You know, and I'll tell you why. Dance hall, which is, you know, dance hall, the space before where all the music was being consumed, that then later became a genre of music, is my favorite music because in some ways, and the musicologists will perhaps tell me differently, but nobody has contested what I've said so far, is that there is very little that someone like Sizzler or Buju Banton can tell you about the distinction in terms of the music that they produce, because in some ways they embody those two genres, reggae and dancehall. And there is so much that is, you know, that rhythmic structure, that staccato, that you know, bass is very much so much a part of them. But I like my music to go boop 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 boop.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Pierre, come in.
Yeah, I have a question for Brian, but before that I want to big up the works of the Reggae Studies Department of the UWI University in Kingston, because I think it's essential work. And we had some doctors from that department since the Italian days at the Reggae University, and I think this collaboration with us is priceless. And also the works of the department in study on academic terms, this complex world, the sound system and reggae that seems underground, but it's global now. It's huge around the world. So the question is a dangerous question for Brian, because I know, Brian, you can talk about it for hours and hours. And is, what is, in your opinion, the most fascinating aspect of the sound system culture on an academic perspective?
Okay, thanks for this, Pierre. I'll try to keep it short. And I would say that the most fascinating aspect, or the one I'm more fascinated with at the moment, is really the way, sound system can be understood as a network of sound and technology that actually travels the world, building connections. It's actually a web of sound and technology, or you can just think about cables. So it's just like the whole globe is wrapped in cables, in sound cables, and what is happening is how the culture really travels the world and changes. So this is what I'm more interested in at the moment. I think this is one of the ways it is possible to understand the movie that we have just watched. So I think there's like two main levels in this movie. One is like an historical level. So, you know, the way it sheds light on some unknown aspects of Jamaican music and culture, which is like it's basically a puzzle. So it's a total mess. And David is like the word expert on this. But
not exactly.
I think so. So you know, so the way Gabre worked with Augustus Pablo, so the way Augustus Pablo, which is himself a very enigmatic figure in the history of Jamaican music, so the way his legacy was sort of kept and rebuilt by Gabre with the Kingston Dub Club. It's a story that spans over like 3 decades, as we have seen. So this is one level. The other level, which I found it even more interesting from a research point of view, is the way, well, why we choose Gabre is really because it's different from all other sounds in Jamaica. So he plays a different style of music. He plays most roots music. And so he got the inspiration from the UK, as he mentions, the UK dub scene. So the UK dub scene was basically created by Jamaican immigrants since the 70s. So they changed the music, they changed the technology, and they made their own thing. Then Gabre, 20 years later, started to get inspired by that scene, but he didn't just copy that. He sort of took something and he made it new again, working with local builders like Ronnie Jarrett. So I think that is very fascinating. So the way he travels to London, hears certain speakers, also from a technical point of view. He hears certain speakers plays, he buys the same speakers, but then he wants to make his own cabinet. So he goes to a Jamaican master builder, and the way they, I think is extraordinary. The way they say that they develop cabinets there. So they bought the speaker and they build the cabinet around that. They listen to it, they don't like it, so they just throw away the cabinet and they build a new one. So that's, well, it's not the usual way to go. And I think it's also, now that basically the sound system world is getting very popular, especially in Europe and stuff, like I would say from a practitioner point of view, everybody's getting very technical. So everybody study books, everybody do simulations on their laptops and stuff. So I think that hearing a master builder from Jamaica working this way, so let's build a cabinet and then we throw it away and build a new one based on what we have heard. So the way you, basically, you work based on your ears rather than on books or softwares, I think is very refreshing. And this is part of the great knowledge of sound and sound system that is coming from Jamaica, basically, and that should be kept and preserved by us all.
Thank you.
I'm hoping Pierre wants to ask me the same question.
Go for it, Sonjah.
So, there's something fascinating to me, and it's mentioned by Brian, but not using this in the same words I'm going to use, and certainly mentioned in the film and foundational to the film, is the fact that the sound system as an apparatus, as a culture, as a system of amplification for sound, built into that was apprenticeship. And I'm wanting to highlight this because there's a way in which Gabriel Selassie in the film learned from Augustus Pablo. And this was foundational to the way sound systems developed and, of course, operated in Jamaica, so that we, in 50 years, in the span of 50 years, had so many artists. So Gabriel mentioned the fact that Augustus Pablo had his own record store. This was part of the operation as well. So you couldn't step into the yard of Augustus Pablo, for example, or Clements or Coxon Dodd or Thomas Wong or any of these foundational people with a sound system, unless you went through the different steps of getting to be recognized, whether it was your talent for sweeping the ground, carrying water, or ultimately your talent as a recording artist or someone who could play a selector. And that, to me, is what's sort of missing from today, because I think even though we're having a conversation about the technology, there's another side to the technology that is now so much prevalent, that if you have access to the technology, which has been democratized in an international context, you can bypass that apprenticeship and become this expert, whether in your head or otherwise. You can become this selector, you're an engineer, you now can operate a sound system of your own in so many ways. And I think that's something that, we talk about preserving, we absolutely need to think of ways in which we can impress upon the younger generation that the apprenticeship, the ways in which you can understudy, learn and grow and master your craft, it's going to make for better music. It's going to make for better, ways in which your craft becomes this thing of longevity. If you think about the music, Gabriel could have dipped into a big, long, deep, broad catalog of music that's still living today. And that's what, being a part of an apprenticeship, in a sense, allows you, because there's growth. You can see yourself in a cycle of teaching. And it's like the Jerusalem schoolroom. The sound system operated like a Jerusalem schoolroom, as the Rastas would say, That for me is the most fascinating part.
Thank you, yes. And I would just add that, this film had a very organic process by which it was produced, through teamwork and through just thoughts and ideas that led places somewhat spontaneously. The origins go back to when the pandemic was happening and nobody could travel and we weren't able to hold sound system out-of-national events in person. We'd actually had an event scheduled for the northeast of Brazil where there's a very unique sound system culture, the culture of the radiolas, and we were unable to go, and we had a session online instead. So Julian was saying, well, let's do a reasoning session. Who can we do a reasoning session with? So I said, well, Gabriel Selassie is an enigmatic guy, as Brian said, and he's got a long, deep history that a lot of people wouldn't know necessarily. Dub Club became this phenomenon in Kingston. Let's do a reasoning session with Gabriel. And Julian's idea was Gabriel would hold a dance, and we would stream the dance after the reasoning session. But we had to do all of this remotely with a film team led by Gareth Daly, who Julian had worked with before. Julian had brought a painter called Denzel Forrester to Jamaica and actually had him sketch at one of Gabriel's sessions at the Kingston Dub Club and create artwork from that. So we engaged the film crew, we put our questions to Gabriel remotely, and we filmed that reasoning session, and he held a dance with no audience, and we streamed it. So, and then Brian, a little later when things began to open up, Brian had the idea, well, if we can travel to Jamaica, why don't we go back to Jamaica and conduct some other interviews that tell more of the story of the Kingston Dub Club and make an actual film out of it. So we did that, and speaking to people like Orville Swaby, who has his place where he builds and repairs sound systems in Greenwich Farm, that was really illuminating. And then, of course, he's also, as he says in the film, he's Augustus Pablo's cousin. So there was that continuity again. And then Ronnie Jarrett, and I found it very striking the way that Ronnie said, Gabriel loves the heavy bass, but that's not good enough. It can't just be all about heavy bass. It has to sound like it has love in it. You have to hear the love in it. Yeah, and for those of us who've attended Dub Club, I think you hear that love in it. The other thing is that you could go to Kingston Dub Club, and it's very popular. It became a place where Usain Bolt frequented and so on. But you hear Gabriel talk about it. When he started it, he struggled to find a venue that would accept the kind of music that he played for basically 10 years. And then when he moved it up to his house, the audience was very, very small. A handful of people at those early sessions. The other thing that I was intrigued by is that Gabriel has this background in hardcore dance hall party sounds. That's how he began, as a dance hall party selector. So these were all some of the things we were trying to incorporate in this film. Also, we should mention that this is actually the second film that's been made through the Sonic Street Technologies project. So Sonjah and Brian, can you tell us a bit about the first film that was made? What's it called? What's in it? And how did it come about?
So the first film is based on a reasoning session that the Reggae Studies unit at the University of the West Indies partnered with the Sonic Street Technologies project on. And Dr. Dennis Howard and myself moderated a conversation with sound system practitioners in the Jam 1 location where the Sound System Federation is sort of headquartered in Jamaica. So Tony Myers, allowed us to use the space, and maybe about 12 or so sound system practitioners, including people like Weepow of Stone Love, Jack Scorpio, and so on, Foundation sound system operators. We reasoned about some of the contemporary issues and, of course, some of the historical importance of sound system in Jamaica. And we recorded that reasoning session. It was edited, and we produced the film Sounds of the Future. And that was recently premiered in Jamaica to a fantastic audience at 10A West Kings House Road in Kingston, where Perry Hensel's history of, so much about Jamaican film and the harder they come and so on, in that space. We had a reasoning session, the screening, the world premiere of the Sounds of the Future in that space to a fine audience. And I think it was so wonderful to see the response from people in Jamaica looking at the reasoning session captured on film. And of course, some of the contemporary sound system operators were there, speaking about the way in which this film needed to be viewed by so many others. So our intention is to actually tour it, certainly have two or so more screenings, one at the University of the West Indies, one with the Alpha Boys or Alpha Institute, and certainly another one in a public domain. What's interesting for me, and I'll say this in my conversation here about Sounds of the Future, is that this Sonic Street Technologies project has certainly opened up for me as a Jamaican and someone interested in sound systems a whole new vista. Because you can be vibing, you can be learning, you can be teaching even the things about Jamaican popular music and Jamaican popular culture and sound system technology and so on. But there are so many things we don't know. And so documenting in the way that we have through these films, talking in the reasoning sessions, I must say there are three different aspects to the project that I'm leading in Jamaica. One, documenting videography and the technology around videography, the key personalities, people like Jack Sowa and so on. The second component is doing a sound system genealogy. So looking at the 9 decades of sound system technology in Jamaica. And until I started this project, it didn't dawn on me that we are now in the 9th decade of sound system work and culture in Jamaica. And then the third aspect is really contributing to that global map of sound systems, where we're doing a survey, and Jamaica's sound systems will be represented in that survey as well. So fascinating for me that, even though I've been living this thing and studying this thing and writing books about this thing and so on, there's still things you just don't know until you really begin to investigate. So the project has opened my eyes, and certainly the team members as well. And so we are very grateful that the funding has afforded this opportunity.
Yes, and I would just add to that, the reasoning session, you actually went as far back as Maritone. Monty Blake, the surviving member of the Maritone family, the longest running sound system in Jamaica that goes right back to 1950 and is still going. And you had, yes.
Ronnie Jarrett, who is in the
Ronnie,
field,
yes,
there.
from 8 Mile Sound, Ronnie Jarrett, master builder. And you had Dennis Howard's father as well,
Yes.
Shanghai
Sound
from
Hi-Fi.
Yeah, from Charles Street in
Jimmy
downtown
Solo.
Jamaica. Yeah, yes. So Jimmy Solo, as he's known. And then going right the way up to more younger sounds like High Grade Sound, who had won the Guinness Cup Clash, the last edition that was held before the pandemic. So it was quite illuminating. And also I remember as part of that, Dennis Howard having a conversation with Weepow and just bringing out all kinds of stories from Weepow that I had never heard the likes of at all. So it was a very inspiring project, and I'm sure there's much more that's coming out of that we have to look forward to. Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, another question, and this time I'm addressing also to you, Sonjah, from the beginning, and it's for both Brian and you, Sonjah. Several years ago, I don't remember which exact years because getting old and the COVID are getting us a little trouble in calculating the facts. I know that the news did spread around the world through the social medias that Gabriel Selassie got jailed, and luckily enough, soon released, basically because of the black noise, Brian would say, of his sound system. And this is opening like the story of sound system culture and reggae versus the status quo. And I think it's very interesting, and Brian wrote something very enlightening on his Black Noise Good that unfortunately is now only in Italian. So can you both tell us something about, because both sound system and reggae are businesses, but have very strong issues against the system.
So, you know, one of the challenges that I faced as an academic was just being able to think through in a very socially responsible context this whole question of the Noise Abatement Act in Jamaica, which was instituted in 1997. And the way in which the Noise Abatement Act has become a means by which you know, sound system operators and event promoters often clash with the law enforcement, you know, agencies, whether it's the paramilitary, as in the police and the Jamaica Defense Force, or the police alone. And from, you know, the very beginning of my own research on Jamaican dancehall, which went into the book Dancehall from Slave Ship to Ghetto, there's an entire context. And if you think about Buju Banton's song, Operation Ardent, which describes a paramilitary operation at the time, the dances were absolutely targeted as places where you could find rude boy. So from the 1960s with King Tubby's Hi-Fi to now, the story is the same. And so, you know, Gabriel Selassie's incident is just one in a long line of incidents. Roy, for example, when I interviewed him years ago, God rest his soul, spoke about an occasion when he was beaten, so badly beaten by the police that his girlfriend had to turn him for him to be able to bathe. And it was King Tubby's sound that he was associated with at the time. The sound was destroyed. Thankfully, King Tubby's genius was of such magnitude that they were able to rebuild the sound by the next day to play as planned in the location they had been booked in. But, you know, these stories abound. We know of the way in which the system, in fact, we were talking about this on the train coming to Benicàssim, that there is the status quo, which has historical roots in slavery and oppression. And those who are now charged with the responsibility to, you know, uphold the law are people who, in my own terms, there has been a superficial transition from the days of slavery into what we now have as contemporary Jamaican society. And that's, of course, a conversation we can have about the African diaspora. And so my interest has now, you know, become entertainment suppression, which can be mapped across the entire African diaspora. Noise abatement acts, you know, whether they're called that or not, they're all over the place. And it goes all the way back.
Yeah, I would just add to that basically I always had this interest in the concept of noise, like acoustically, philosophically, and historically. And my thought on that is that I mean, it's not just a matter of culture. So what we describe as noise or not noise is not just a matter of culture, but is essentially a matter of power. So, and how power works is basically across lines of race and lines of class. So what you would have as noise is something that is usually poor and is usually black. So that's noise. So I consider sound system as one of the greatest expression of this sort of black noise, as I described it in my book, which of course, as Sonjah mentioned, has got very deep roots. It's something that starts with slavery, with the beating of the drum, the prohibition of the beating of the drum, etc. But I was also very interested in another way of thinking about noise. So basically, I like to think to noise as rhythm still uncoded. So what noise is like the source of the new rhythm. So it's really the sound of the future. And also here, we know that the popular music of the 20th century, I mean, the engine behind it has been black people, black culture. They have created the most extraordinary and new music out of that, out of what was once called noise. And now becomes the new trend. Like now we have Afrobeats, and that's the latest creation from the black diaspora in terms of the new rhythm. And also I was interested in the way, basically, what is the threshold between noise and music? So it's actually a political threshold. And the way this threshold is applied is very, it's very different, and it works according to the different environment. Sonjah mentioned the Noise Abatement Act in Jamaica, which is, that's pretty much a military threshold. Like you cross the threshold, you got police riding the dance. But there are also other ways of basically policing this threshold. As an example, in London, where I've been living for a while and doing research, it's all about algorithm control. So you play a venue, sound system plays at a venue, they got monitored, and there's a software that analyzes the dB levels, and there's a threshold in levels which makes it turn noise. So actually you play music, you're in the market, but then you suddenly, you just go a bit over the threshold and you're actually breaking the law. So you're no more entertaining people, you're actually committing a crime. And so I think this is very interesting, and yeah, this is basically what my book was about.
Yes, thank you. And just to add to that, in the film Rocker Sound Station, Tales of the Kingston Dub Club, Gabre did explain about the police raiding the club and him getting pepper sprayed and so on. And we debated long and hard about whether to include it. At one point, we were thinking about opening with it. We took it out in the end, not because of the content, more because of the form. It's a long, complicated story about what happened exactly and his response to it. And it didn't look so interesting on the screen, and we didn't really have footage that we could illustrate what he was talking about. So in the end, we took it out. Also, at the time, the film was significantly longer than the version you've seen now. So, you know, thinking about it, maybe at some point we might reinsert it if we find some way to make it work. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, also he described what he was able to do under lockdown during the pandemic when there was curfew in Jamaica. And again, you know, we debated about whether or not to keep that in, or maybe it wouldn't be so relevant by the time the film is screened, as, you know, we're all sitting here now. So anyway, it's just other things for us to think about. Now, I think we're approaching the time when we can open things up for question and answer with you good people here. So you can all think about what questions you would like to put to our special guests. And do we have any questions from, the Riddim crew? Pete, come in.
Just use this one, huh?
Check, check.
Oh,
Okay, now it's working. It's a question related to what you were just talking about, the Noise Abatement Act, and how the state in Jamaica deals with sound systems. Yesterday we had Zana Romeo here in the Reggae University, and she made a interesting but worrying remark first emphasizing the importance of sound systems for Jamaican culture and for basically everybody in Jamaica. Kind of what you described, how you grew up with sound systems, with the presence of sound systems, but then saying that less and less people have even the opportunity to enjoy a sound system because of the Noise Abatement Act forcing sounds to close down at midnight, or I'm not even sure how it's enforced. So my question is, what exactly is the current situation, and how do sound system owners deal with it? How do they confront the state, or could even the academia intervene, be it by education, or I don't know, maybe you have any ideas about that?
So, thank you, Pete.
Hector?
Check, yeah. So one of the most critical things about this Sonic Street Technologies project and the work we're doing in Jamaica is clearly to raise awareness about the importance of sound systems in Jamaica and globally. But I will say that, you know, there is a lack of understanding about the role of sound systems in Jamaica on the part of Jamaicans who live in Jamaica and occupy spaces that allow them to see themselves as us versus them. And I'm saying it that way because there are some people who don't understand anything about sound systems at all, except that it is something that makes noise and it makes them not able to sleep. And then there are another set of people who are the creators and the operators and understand that it is their means of a living, making a living, it's a business. Never the twain shall meet almost. But what is most important about that divide is that there are no systems in place, almost, to make sure that sound systems gain the notoriety in the way that the tourism industry, for example, has. So, and I use this example all the time, tourism is an industry in Jamaica. There are hotels, there are tours, there are operators, from the very top to the very bottom in terms of the commercial levels. The same almost exists, but they are parts, like a car. You have the car parts in separate places, but the car has not been assembled where sound system is concerned. And as a matter of fact, in a broader sense, the Jamaican music business. So it is perhaps to be explained by how short a time, but like I said, it's 9 decades now. How long is it going to take us to understand that this is really a business, this is something that we need to cherish and take care of and professionalize? So I do my part, talking in multiple contexts, educating people about the importance of the sound system as a part of a cultural and creative industry. But more importantly, unless you are speaking with dollars, it's very difficult to convince the powered class in Jamaica that the sound system is something that we need to be able to professionalize and support. What is ironic, though, is that on every election campaign, there are multiple sound systems, there are multiple selectors, there are multiple ways in which the sound system is a part of every electioneering season. But there is a bit of hypocrisy, because you can use the sound system as you need and abuse the sound system as you need in terms of those paramilitary operations I mentioned. But to really look at, you know, energizing that business, the support is just not there. And I am very much a part of the group, the set of people in Jamaica trying to advocate for the seriousness of the business.
Thank you.
And I would add that basically, just in terms of the methodology of the Sonic Street Technologies project, the idea to basically to do these films, short films, was just to basically it was twofold. That one was the idea to basically give something back to the people we do research with. So usually academic projects basically produce books that takes like years to be published, or produce academic articles that nobody really reads apart from academics. So we wanted to do filmed interviews and possibly to edit into movies to give something back to the people and try to build an archive of the sound systems and the sonic street technologies, which is basically freely available. We will host everything on our YouTube channel in due course. But about what Pete was asking, as an example, the reasoning session that we turned into a film, and basically we wanted to sort of give it back to the Jamaican Sound System Federation, which sort of hosted the session together with the Reggae Studies Unit, as basically to try and support their struggle to have sound system recognized, like politically and culturally in Jamaica. So our hope was that, like, having a movie which testifies for the interest of actually the like a European institution, very prestigious, such as the European Research Council, into Jamaica sound system culture, that would possibly be something that they could put on the table when they actually go to try and deal with the restrictions and regulations. So in a sense, that was a way for us to try back their struggle and make the academic research actually able to create like a positive change in the world.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, so we're just moving to question and answer now. I think we got a couple of questions. Can we? Yes.
Down there.
Yeah, you got to turn on the microphone. Wait. Switch the mic.
Wait.
1 minute. 1 minute. Technical issues. Yeah. Mind the feedback.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Sí, hola.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you. My voice isn't good either, but never mind. Thank you for your work and your research, because it's really important. And congratulations to receiving funding, which is crucial. I wanted to ask you about, was it difficult to justify impact of your research to the funders? And if you could tell us a little bit about decolonizing knowledge within your research. And third question, I'm very naughty now. Third question would be, what could be done? What could be done about helping to fund more PhD projects? Because as we know, PhD funding is extremely difficult, and about opening area, to the researchers within this specific subject. Thank you. And so.
Something is. No, sir. Talk about noise.
Yeah, sorry.
We've been talking about noise, guys.
Yeah. No microphone? Yeah. Can you hear us okay? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think this one's working. Okay.
Check. Okay, thanks for these questions very much, or three questions. I'll start from the middle one about decolonizing knowledge. Of course, is always a challenge when you work from a European perspective with non-Western cultures and non-Western contributors. So it's something that we aim to be really careful about. But in terms of the methodology that we are employing into this research, in a sense, we were quite lucky because of the pandemic, because actually the project started just in 2021, so when traveling was completely banned. And the original project was completely based on traveling. So we had to reformulate, shift completely the project. And what came out that was possible to do was to work with local partners. So commissioning different parts of the research in different parts of the world to local partners and contributors that we already knew or that we came to know, and so to work with them. So this kind of started as a practical need, because we couldn't travel and go out there and do the research, but it soon became, I would say, also one very distinctive feature of the project, because this way we're actually able to transfer funds to different places in the global south, in South America or in Jamaica, and give respect to the people like Sonjah and the Reggae Studies Unit, who have been doing this for ages, decades. And in exchange, we can have a work which is much more deeper than what we could have done, because it's based on local knowledge. So I think that basically this started out of need, but it soon became like an ethical and methodological strength of the whole project. And this is the way we'll work. So we'll work with researchers and sound system practitioners. We're already linked in Brazil, Sao Paulo, in Bogota, Colombia, in Mexico City, traveling to do conferences, but always bringing the local team and the local practitioners with their own sound system into different parts of the world. Because, yeah, as I said, we try to be non-extractive, and so we try to make good use of the funds we have. In terms of the justify the impact, we just like 1.5 years into the project. At the moment, I'd say that it seems all fine, so we'll see at the end, but it seems all fine. And what was the last question? The fundings for the PhDs. Well, this project has provided a few postdoc positions. One is mine, as an example, which I wouldn't have probably been able to get anywhere else in the world on such a project, and with the double background that I have. So what we're trying to do is to actually open a space also in the academia for this double background of researcher practitioner, which is a thing, but is usually very much connected with the arts world. When you talk about practice as research, which as example like Goldsmiths, where we're based, is, it's quite established, but is always connected to arts, not to like grassroots sonic practice, like sound system and other sonic technologies. So what we're trying to do is like to open a space also for, to basically add value to the background that people and the practice of the people in the field. So I hope that this responded to your question.
Yeah, and I think we've got another question over here. So yeah, and be careful with that roving mic, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I have a question to Dr. Niaah, because we talk about the preservation of culture as sound system culture and places But in the context of a big city like Kingston, there are also other people who are impacted by those sounds in the night. And it affects like school children and so on, and this is a huge challenge. So what are your position on that, and how we can solve that to fit both aims?
So thank you. One of the things I didn't mention, or I suppose I didn't elaborate on what I mean by, professionalizing and developing a system around how sound systems would operate. So as a Jamaican music industry, which doesn't exist yet, but people call it that, what would be required is instituting things like entertainment zones. And those things have been on the books and in the conversation for some time. But successive administrations have not necessarily been so successful at, one, declaring entertainment zones. I now know that we have maybe one that has been declared, which is in the area of the airport, the Port Royal stretch. There are others. This is in the works for them to be declared because the development orders, for example, we have looked at them. I serve on the Entertainment Advisory Board in the Ministry of Culture, so this is information that I'm intimately aware of. The context, though, is that you really would need to have entertainment zones create the ecosystem around which, or within which, sound systems can thrive without becoming seen as a nuisance to the populace. And so, if you think about what would create the sort of environment for commercial activity, the people, poor people, creative people in Jamaica have been the ones to always come up with these things that can sustain them, not encouraged at all by the establishment. And what we're trying to do is to shift understanding. And this is why I'm an educator, because I don't see any other way to impact that. Every time a student comes into my class, it's about being able to share the importance of this so that when they go into their spheres of work, their homes, they can then say to someone who is speaking in a pejorative way about noise that it's something important. That to call someone else's creation noise based on an arbitrary understanding of the decibel levels is quite a problem. So if you want to be able to talk about the decibel levels, well, come with a decibel meter and have the regulations in place and the systems in place that tell us over such and such a decibel level, it's noise. Those systems, when I say the systems are not in place, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. We're rapidly running out of time, but we'll try and squeeze in these last two questions, and this is going to be the final two questions. There's one over here too, so try and be brief.
Sure. It's just a comment, and the comment simply is that there has to be an understanding, though, in the conversation that there has to be zoning. So it's painful for homeowners, for example, to have a dance hall operating in a residential zoned area. Yeah, they can't be side by side, and those zones need to be put in place and rigorously enforced so that the dance hall can operate, the sound system can thrive, but the citizens can also have their rights and enjoy them.
Thank you. Yes, and a final question over here. You have a question? Yes? Thank you.
Yes. Give thanks for your very inspirational talk. I feel full of joy and inspiration to have received so much knowledge about the sound system as a cultural aspect. And I wanted to find out whether you, Brian, said originally that the project, the Sonic Street Technology project, also adds value to the local communities, and if so, how? That's my first question. And my second question is, since we have learned how within the project you have joined informal expertise knowledge about sound system and building sound system with academia, with academic knowledge. And I also want to take it to, from what I understand, one step higher and say there is something very bonding, like you were calling it a network. Around the globe, I think there is also an inspirational network, and spiritual network. And there is something like a sound system identity. Could you call it that, if you want to use that term at all? But is there something like a sound system identity globally?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for these questions. So about the first one, I think I already mentioned a few of the ways we actually try to work with local communities, which is by filming interviews so that they can get a feedback, doing small movies, which we do with shared copyright. So, as example, the other movie we just made, the one from the reasoning session in Jamaica that Sonjah talked about, the copyright of that movie is shared between us as SST and the Jamaican Sound System Federation. So they got a copy of the movie and they can do whatever they want with the movie. And we try to basically back their effort. We encourage them, I mean, we can just encourage them to sort of bring institutional representatives around a table to actually start a conversation about the zoning, the regulations, and the entertainment regulations. So this is like a model that we would like to apply in different parts of the world. Another way is just, this may sound, I mean, a bit like, well, surprising, but I mean, Jamaican music and culture is very popular around the globe. So it's something that, in a sense, is already, I mean, it still struggles, I would say, especially in Jamaica, to be recognized, but is on a higher level respect to other sonic street technologies culture, like the Pico in Colombia or the sonideros in Mexico. They are, what we have found out is that they are not acknowledged almost at all in, I mean, in the wider cultural environment, even if they're like very rich and thriving culture with history that spans over 5, 6, or 7 decades. So as much as the Jamaican sound system do. So in a sense, to sort of try to bring them into conversation with keeping the practitioners and their own knowledge and practice at the center of our focus, I think it's something that could have a value, in a sense, to start the process that, in the case of Jamaican sound system, is much more, you know, at a later stage now. So we're actually talking to have the government sit around the table with the federation, which is something that is just unthinkable at the moment, as example in Barranquilla, in a sense. And the other thing that you mentioned, is there a global sound system identity? In a sense, this is exactly what the project is about. We think so, but we have to find out. So basically the main idea behind the project, I mean, what is very distinctive about the project is the focus on technology, really. So how the technology basically is, allows the culture to take a certain shape and to materialize. So of course, it is connected to the environment, to the social conditions, to a specific music style and stuff. But what is common to all these sonic technologies around the world is the technology itself, is the sound system. So the idea behind the project is that different engineers working with different kind of music can have more in common and find more agreement discussing the technologies than probably the selectors or the DJs, which will just speak like a completely different language. So a reggae DJ won't really get in tune with a cumbia DJ, or I mean, not really, but the guy behind the cumbia sonidero can probably be able to have a conversation with the Jamaican sound system engineer. So this is the basic, I mean, the idea behind it. And yeah, we think so. I mean, it would be fascinating to find out. The project is 5 years, and we're just into 1.5 years. So let's see.
Okay, so thanks to each and every one for your contribution. We have to clear the space because the House of Rastafari will be holding their seminar, Zion Train, Rastafari Journey to Change Ourselves in Order to Change the World, at 6:30 p.m., so stick around for that. Also, just to remind, tomorrow, right here at the Reggae University, 3:45 p.m., we will have the screening of the film In a Vanguard Style, a documentary on Iratian steppers. If you haven't seen that film, definitely check it out. It's a fantastic piece of work. And immediately following that screening, we will have a conversation with Mark Iratian from Iratian Steppers and Rico OBF. And then we've actually got a double header tomorrow. So at 6 p.m., we will have a session with the Midnight Rocker himself, in conversation with Horace Andy. But one more time, please give a warm round of applause for our special guests, Sonjah Stanley Niaah and Brian D'Aquino.